We are honored today to be able to interview Professor Peter Singer for our SDF talk. He is known to be the world's most influential living philosopher and author of many great books, such as Animal Liberation, Practical Ethics, The Life You Can Save, and many more. I would like to introduce Princeton University Professor Peter Singer.
Thank you very much for these kind words. So there are some issues specifically related to the pandemic that I've been writing about. I've been writing, for example, about how we try to work out whether lockdowns are justified, given that they have significant costs, and how do we calculate the costs and the benefits. And I've been writing more recently about vaccine distribution. Now that we do have vaccines, I think there's a major problem in getting them to people in low-income countries who generally have not been getting them or not in sufficient doses. So this is an example of the problem of the unequal world that we live in. Well, it does connect with animals, of course, because this virus has come to us from animals. And in a way, you could say that it's a punishment for our mistreatment of animals that we have picked up such a contagious and often deadly virus that has so disrupted our economy. So one lesson that we could learn is that in addition to the reasons that I've long argued for back, as you say, to 1975, from concern for animals themselves, concern for their welfare, that we should not be eating animals. And also more recently, I've argued that animal industries contribute greatly to climate change, and that this is also a reason for reducing our animal consumption. We now have a third important reason, and that is that the rearing of animals for food and then humans coming into contact with those animals is a means by which new viruses get to humans. But in addition, I think we should also be thinking about factory farming, which one expert has described as the ideal place to breed new viruses. If you want to breed new viruses, he said, take 10,000 or 20,000 animals, crowd them into a single shed, stress them so that their immune systems are weakened, and then you will find new viruses developing, and then send humans to round them up and collect them, and the humans will get those viruses and spread them into the community. And of course, that's exactly what factory farms have been doing for many years now, and we have had new viruses coming out of those factory farms. So it's another major reason for ceasing to produce animals in that way. Well, the best way that we could continue to eat meat is by the development of cellular-based meat, which is now happening. In fact, just a month or two ago, cellular-based chicken went on sale in Singapore, the first country to license and sell it. And this is actually chicken. It's at every cell is chicken, but it's grown from cells, so there was no live animal who ever was there. And for that reason, the viruses are not going to infect it. It can be kept much more hygienic, and it also reduces the greenhouse gas production. So one way we could eat meat is by producing not just chicken, but beef and pork and lamb and all the meats we eat at the cellular level. But if we're not going to do that, or not quick enough, then if people ate animals that are more traditionally reared out in the fields, not concentrated into sheds, that would be a better life for the animals, and it would also be less risky for our health. The key ethical question related to climate change is, are we doing everything possible to avoid harming people who have not contributed significantly to greenhouse gases, and who, because they are poor, are less able to defend themselves against the effects of global warming. Some of these people are are living now in poor countries and already suffering consequences of global warming, but others will be living in decades to come. How can we justify our own lifestyle when we know that for our own luxurious lifestyle, for the immense use of fossil fuel that people in affluent countries use, and also because of the consumption of meat and its contributions to greenhouse gases, we are harming other people who, as I say, are much poorer than us and less able to defend themselves from it. I think that's will be seen by future generations as a real crime, as an amazing indifference to the well-being of other people that we did not act sooner. So I hope that more people will listen to those like Greta Thunberg in Sweden, who are saying this has to stop. This is an outrageous thing that my generation of affluent people are doing to other people in the world. Well, certainly I do see the animal movement in terms of a continuation of the movements to expand the sphere of ethics beyond a narrow group. And if we look at human history, and we see that in earlier times, ethics was limited to people very much like you. So, your community, maybe your local tribal society, even at first, but then your nation or other people of your religion or your race. All of these criteria were used to draw boundaries about who was important and who mattered, and questions of men and women, of course. Also, men drew the boundaries and gave less weight to the interests of women. We haven't completely got beyond it, of course, but at least at the level of important statements like the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, we regard them as applying to all human beings. But it's also important that we recognize that that's not the end of it, that non-human animals are also sentient beings, that they can feel pain, and that their pain matters. So yes, we should support all of those who have been underprivileged or neglected or ignored in the past, and try to ensure that everyone's life is as good as it can be. Well, we should be looking at problems in a global way, and that's really important because many of these problems we can't solve at a country level. And if we just focus on our own country, in fact, it's going to be self-defeating, because if all countries do that, we're not going to be able to cooperate and solve the big problems that you mentioned. What we should be doing differently here is taking a more global approach, a more cooperative approach, and thinking about the well-being of all of those who inhabit this earth, whether they are human or non-human animals. Well, one thing you can look into is what you're eating. The consumption of animals makes us complicit in intensive farming, which causes an immense amount of suffering to tens of billions of animals each year. So if you are eating animals, and especially animals from factory farms, one way you can avoid that is by stopping doing that. There are plenty of healthy plant-based foods that you can get, and I know Korean cooking has a lot of dishes that use vegetables and use tofu, which are very nutritious, so it's not a problem to do that, and that's the first step. The next step, I think, is to think what you can do about global poverty. Can you donate to some of those effective organizations? If not, can you lobby your government to increase its foreign aid level and to make sure that its foreign aid is being used effectively to do the most good for people of low-income countries? All of those things are ways in which we can do more good than we have been before, and I think that's the ultimate test of whether we're moving our life in an ethical direction. I think one reason young people don't feel safe, even before the pandemic, is because of climate change. As far as the climate was concerned, we assumed that was stable and was not going to change. And it was only in the 1970s and 1980s that we really learned that there was a possibility that was not the case. And of course, this has been confirmed. So I think for safety, young people need to focus on stopping climate change or reducing it to the lowest possible level. I've also said that global poverty is an important issue as well. That can help the world to make the world a much fairer place. It's not fair to have a world in which some people are living on hundreds of thousands of dollars, much more than they need, when other people are living on $2 a day. My interest first was in helping people in extreme poverty. There were some dreadful famines when I was a teenager, famine in Biafra, a part of Nigeria. There were horrible photos of those starving children. And then there were other famines in other countries as well. So really that came first. But then I realized when I started thinking about animals that they also matter, that just as we push out of our sight people who are far away and people who are different from us, of a different race, so even more we push out of our sight non-human animals. I don't agree at all that if you're concerned about animals, you're not concerned about humans. It's interesting how the vegetarian and vegan eating has spread around the world. You mentioned you didn't have much of it in Korea, but there are also many European countries that where it was very strange to be a vegetarian. But now that's changed too to some extent, and there are French animal organizations and French vegans. So it's good to see that the world is becoming more open to people with different ideas. And this is important. I hope we'll continue to be open to people with different ideas, to discuss those ideas openly and freely, and to think about how we can make the world a better place.